Calvin Klein is now in the global spotlight because of Jungkook's campaign, day after day leading up to October 28. The fashion world is like holding its breath. This is no ordinary campaign. This is a moment where the eyes of the world, from Seoul to Milan, from New York to Tokyo, are fixed on one name, Jungkook. Imagine the atmosphere at Calvin Klein headquarters. All divisions, from creative teams to marketing executives, are pulsating in one and the same rhythm. This campaign should be a milestone. Jungkook isn't just a model. He's a symbol of change. Behind the scenes, meeting after meeting is conducted non-stop. The idea board is filled with pictures of Jungkook in various poses, with a lighting concept that emphasizes Calvin Klein's masculine and minimalist side. Designers speak in visual language, while executives speak in the language of numbers they know. Every second of Jungkook's involvement is worth millions of dollars in global exposure. But what is interesting is not just the economic potential, but the psychological effect of its appearance in such a tight fashion industry. Many still remember how when Calvin Klein first announced Jungkook as a global ambassador, the site's servers had slowed down due to a surge in visitors. The hashtag number Jungkook's Calvin Klein became trending in more than 40 countries in less than an hour. But what makes this phenomenon so different is the collective feeling among the public as if they are not just looking at a fashion campaign, but witnessing a turning point in the history of the image of Asian celebrities in the Western industry. During this time, Calvin Klein was synonymous with faces that came from the Western world: Kate Moss, Mark Wahlberg, Justin Bieber icons depicting rebellion with confidence. But this time, the narrative shifted. Jungkook presented something else, something that the fashion world wasn't ready for but couldn't resist. It comes not with the impression of wanting to be accepted, but with the energy of, "I'm already here, see how I lead." Not a few people see Calvin Klein's move as a big bet. Behind the scenes, there is serious talk about risk. Will the image of Jungkook, known as a K-pop idol, be able to come into line with the provocative image of Calvin Klein? But the result instantly answered all doubts. In the first 24 hours since the release of the campaign photos, sales of the men's collection jumped 268%. More than 120 international fashion outlets wrote about it, not just as an endorsement deal, but as a case study of how the power of personal branding transcends cultural and linguistic boundaries. Even in an industry that often looks down on Asian artists, Jungkook forces them to change perceptions. And here's the catch. This campaign, which will be released in full on October 28, is believed to be the next phase of Calvin Klein's strategy, making Jungkook not just the face of the campaign, but the defining face of their era. Industry analysts call it Project Recoding. The concept is simple. Remodel Calvin Klein's DNA by instilling the spirit of global youth unlimited culture. And who better to lead that than Jungkook, an artist who grew out of the K-pop industrial system but was able to penetrate and dominate the Western market without losing his native identity. If we look deeper, Jungkook and Calvin Klein's relationship is not just a business affair. It's an intelligent symbiosis. Calvin Klein, which over the past few years has struggled with the saturation of its brand image, found a new breath through Jungkook. Jungkook, who is known for being selective in his collaborations, uses the platform to expand his spectrum of influence beyond music. He knew that visual images now spoke just as powerfully as sounds. And so every time Jungkook appears in a Calvin Klein campaign, there is something more than aesthetics. There is a subtle but powerful personal narrative about independence, about control over the body and identity, about a new definition of masculinity. The fashion world is now moving towards inclusivity and cultural awareness, but there are not many figures who can combine the two things naturally. Jungkook did so without apparent effort. Just look at how influential it is on social media. Every Calvin Klein post featuring Jungkook scored an average engagement rate 20 times higher than any other ambassador's post. It's not a coincidence. It's a social phenomenon. People don't just see the product, they see the representation. Each photo of Jungkook in Calvin Klein jeans is like a statement. Fashion is not about white skin or yellow skin, but about presence. This is where the paradigm shift happens. When creative directors in Paris and New York talk about the new direction of the fashion industry, Jungkook's name is often referred to not as a guest star, but as a reference point. He's setting a new standard of appeal, wrote Vogue Business. With the October 28 campaign coming up, many predict that Calvin Klein will use the concept of reconnection, presenting a visual narrative that emphasizes human connectedness in the global era with Jungkook as its axis. Some sources even mention there will be a cinematic concept live performance in Tokyo, something that has never been done before in Calvin Klein's history. If true, this will be a monumental event that not only changes the direction of the brand's marketing, but also confirms Jungkook's position as a cross-disciplinary icon. Imagine a singer from Busan who used to be known only through the music scene is now leading a global conversation about the future of fashion. A journey not built by scandal or controversy, but by work, consistency, and visual integrity. And as October 28 approaches, the world is not only waiting for Calvin Klein's new collection, but also waiting for the moment when Jungkook once again proves no stage is too big for him, because every stage is his own. When the world thinks Calvin Klein is using Jungkook to strengthen its brand image, the reality is reversed. Behind the camera lens and the perfect studio lighting, Jungkook set the direction, tone, and even the atmosphere of the campaign itself. Many people in the industry know, usually, a big brand like Calvin Klein will define everything from A to Z, the concept, angle, styling, color tone, even the facial expressions of the models. But this time, it's different. As Calvin Klein's creative team worked with Jungkook, they realized something that rarely happens. The artist is not just a model waiting for instructions, but a figure with a keen vision of how he wants to look. He knows when to stare intensely at the camera, when to relax, when just one glance can transmit a whole story. Even in his first campaign photo shoot in Los Angeles, one of Calvin Klein's creative directors told Business of Fashion, "He didn't just wear the clothes, he made the clothes make sense." In that one sentence, the whole power dynamic changed. Jungkook isn't being controlled by a global brand, he's making it relevant again. Let's pull it back a little. Calvin Klein over the past 2 decades has been known for almost the same formula. Sensual, provocative, urban. But the market began to saturate. Their classic sex sells strategy no longer appeals to a new generation more aware of meaning, identity, and representation. Then came Jungkook, an icon with a clean, intense appeal, but not deprived of a side of mystery. He does not need to appear vulgar to look strong, does not need to challenge with words to assert his existence. His silence speaks louder than anything, and Calvin Klein knows this is the moment they can't miss. But what they don't realize is, Jungkook will never be a puppet of the industry. She came into fashion in her own way, full of control, full of direction. During the creative process of his latest campaign, which will be released on October 28, many eyewitnesses from the production team admitted that Jungkook was directly involved in the visual discussion. He called for more natural lighting to capture the texture of real leather and fabric, rather than digital edits. He also rejected a set of styling that he considered does not reflect the honesty of design. For an industry as big as Calvin Klein, such requests are rarely approved, but this time they are followed because they know Jungkook's authentic aura is precisely the product that the global public is looking for today. There is a meaningful silence whenever Jungkook stands in front of the camera. The team at the location even called it the Jungkook pause, a moment where he stares blankly in one direction, then slowly changes body position as if to the rhythm of music he only hears himself. From the outside it looks simple, but on the monitor screen it is a visual miracle. It's no exaggeration that some photographers refer to Jungkook as the modern definition of Calvin Klein masculinity. But the interesting thing is, that interpretation is now coming from Jungkook himself. He's reshaping Calvin Klein's definition of masculinity. No longer just an athletic body and sensual expression, but an introspective, reflective, and gentle expression without losing strength. The world is now seeing a new side of what is called sexy. Self-control, silence, and full awareness of who you are. When the teaser of the campaign was released a few days ago, the immediate public reaction was overwhelming. Not just because of the visuals, but because the atmosphere feels more humane. There is something behind each of Jungkook's gazes that makes people feel like they know him not as an idol, but as someone who is growing under the glare of the spotlight without losing his way. That's why many media analysts say that Calvin Klein is now facing an interesting paradox. They brought Jungkook to strengthen the brand, but in the end, it was Jungkook who strengthened the meaning of the brand itself. In the 30-second promotional video leaked to the internet, one simple scene is visible. Jungkook walks slowly down a concrete corridor, only in jeans and a denim jacket. No music, no slogans. But when he stopped and stared at the camera, there was an incredible sensation of control. In a narrative of the fashion world that has been full of instructions, Jungkook presents something that cannot be taught. The tranquility that reigns. He didn't scream, but all eyes were on him. And maybe this is what makes October 28 suddenly become a kind of big day for the fashion world. Not just because of Calvin Klein's new collection, but because it will be a moment where the public realizes Jungkook is no longer the ambassador of the brand. He is the pivot that determines where the visual direction and values of this brand will go in the future. Many say Calvin Klein is controlling the global narrative. But if we look closely, the opposite is true. The narrative is now flowing from Jungkook. He no longer followed the script of the industry. It was the industry that rewrote his script based on the way Jungkook moved, spoke, and was silent. This is where the real power lies. Quiet control. Calvin Klein may have a stage, but Jungkook holds the lights. And on October 28, when the whole world will watch the campaign premiere, they will not see just advertising. They will see a symbolic transformation in which Asian artists, for the first time, lead the aesthetic direction of the American brand. A rare event that will probably only be truly understood many years after this, when people finally realize Calvin Klein is not in control of Jungkook. It was Jungkook who taught Calvin Klein how to speak to a new world. But what makes Jungkook remarkable is precisely the calmness he brings to the middle of the drama. On social media, fans are speculating on how this October 28 campaign will perform. Some have guessed that there will be a long video with Jungkook's personal narration. There are also those who believe that Calvin Klein will release an interactive version where the audience can choose a visual point of view through the official website. But whatever the form, one thing is certain: the effect will be great. So big that even before the release, shares of PVH Corp, Calvin Klein's parent, had already begun to rise by 6% just because of the rumors surrounding this campaign. A clear proof that one name, one face, one aura can move the economy of the world fashion industry. But if we look deeper, actually this campaign is more than just business momentum. It is about the representation of a new generation hungry for real figures. Jungkook represents a generation that grew up with the pressure to look perfect in front of the camera, but chose to showcase his human side. That's where the power of this new version of Calvin Klein comes in. Not about time's perfection asterisk, but about time's presence asterisk. The next time a campaign video premieres globally, there will probably be a moment when millions of people pause, look, and think, this is not an ad, it's a feeling. And in that moment, the world will realize that October 28th is not just the day Calvin Klein's new collection launches, it's the day that the boundaries between fashion, art, and humanity momentarily disappear, merging into one figure walking quietly under the light, Jungkook.